Hello everyone, this is Ibrahim again with another video on learning Flutter. So in the last few videos we've actually seen how to run different Flutter projects. We've designed our own app that we are actually developing right now, which is the Blood Donation app. We've learned the building blocks of any Flutter app. So we've actually learned about imports and so we started off with importing material, and we learned that in order for us to use the material kind of look and feel, the aesthetics, we need to um, have the material app in place with home in it, with the scaffold. Scaffold allows us to set app bars and drawers and floating buttons and just stuff of that sort. So this is parts of material app, and we've actually stacked elements together on top of each other. So in this video we're supposed to add an image, so we will be adding an image later in the video, but for now, as promised in the last video, I will be talking about themes today. Of course, as the material app allows us to set a common theme, a global theme to the application, so we don't have to set the colors every time we create a screen. So I think it's important to set this beforehand, like at least have things set up so we will be using the theme in the application without having to set our own colors or even create like um, our own shared file here. Say we could create a folder here called utilities or common or resources, and in it we could create something like style.dots, and then we just import different variables from that class. Well, it's pretty hectic, isn't it? So instead we could just simply set a global theme here, and the theme allows us to set the different colors, and it also allows us to set a common text. So let's see how is that done. Again, it's very simple. Looking at what the material app, we see that it has a home widget, which where we created all the children, and then we also have a color title. We also have theme data, takes in theme data. Um, yeah, locale too. We have a locale here, and several other goodness that you could look at on your own, but or we could explore them later on in the future videos in the advanced set of videos. Anyways, so instead of the material app, in order for us to set a theme, just like how we set home, we set the theme. And notice, if you're confused on what this takes, on what kind of class or widget this takes, you just hover over the keyword here, and it shows you that it takes in theme data. So very simple. We set theme data just like that. Theme data takes in several parameters. So now we're basically told Flutter that we're setting a theme, and the theme data would be as follows. So the theme data takes in few parameters like the primary swatch, primary color brightness, and we will set all of these, and I'll explain them as we set them. So the primary swatch, is more like it's what's it basically sets all the necessary widgets, so all the coloring in the application is set through the primary swatch. It sets you different shades of the color, as in it sets the brightness, the secondary color, the primary color, and so on and so forth. So it's automatically set for you. So in that sense, we could say primary swatch, and this takes in material color. So we could, if you hover over this keyword, we can see that it takes in material color. So we start off with material color. So there we are. So material color, and then inside of the material color, see it says color swatch. So it takes in a color of any sort. Now this is the primary color. You could so All right, let's not do this for now, because if you want to create your own custom material color, so okay, I think I shouldn't so the primary swatch, as I said, basically when you set a single color, it automatically sets. So if you go like colors dot red, it automatically sets different shades of color for you. And notice that you can see here, this is an actual material color type, so these are predefined for you. If you want to define your own color, then in that case there's a different set of things you should do, which I'll explain later. This was something I wanted to do now, but I figured it would probably confuse you a bit. But it's not really confusing, but if you do understand this, it's an easy process later. But let's stick to this. Let's stick to the predefined colors. Notice that this is a material color, so you really don't have to do your own material color setup. So these are already set for you within Flutter. You notice how the red has different shades? This is what the primary swatch is. If you set primary color, it only sets one single color. So it doesn't really set the whole spectrum of shades of that's why I set the primary swatch. This will come in handy later on. I'll show you this as we progress down the line. And now after we've set the primary color, we could also set the font. So we could go font family. We could unify the font, and we just give it the name of the font. In this case, let me use Quicksand or Sun Near, or whatever you like. Yeah, and then so we've set the font. Now I want to set a text theme. So this is a global font. So if we try to save, if you notice this should, like, if I just save this automatically, let me run this without debugging. Now notice how the general theme of the application changes using just a few just a few lines, and everything just completely changes for you. There we are. You see that this completely changes. So if I set this to green, for example, you'll get to see that immediately reflected on the overall app. And if you have a drawer and other stuff, this will also change automatically. Now let me keep going with the fonts. So this is basically a custom font. So in this case, in order for me to add this font, what I have to do is I have to make a slight change to pubspec.yaml. Okay, so before we get to do that, we have to add the font that we need. So I'll create a folder called assets, and in that folder I'll be adding so at the top level I'll add a folder called assets. So in the assets folder I'll have another folder called fonts. Okay, and in the fonts I'll add the necessary fonts that I need, and you could get those fonts from maybe, I don't know, Google Fonts. Let me show you Google Fonts, and then you could choose the font if you like. So, and then you just download that font, the font you need, and then you could simply just import it, copy and paste it here. I already have the font that I need, so I'm going to just copy and paste it here. Let me just get those fonts. Alright, just get this font. Let me just fix this really quickly. Delete. And this is supposed to be, where is it? I'm supposed to create a folder within this. So we'll call this fonts. What's wrong? So assets. What is wrong? Let me just fix this really quickly. Okay, so Reveal Explorer, and just paste it here. So these are the fonts. So I just copy paste them in, and that's it. Now I have them in my assets folder. I have them here. So this under assets we have fonts, and then we have these different these fonts in place. Now we need to tell Flutter to use these fonts to import them and have them ready for us to have them ready for us. Now if you notice in the pubspec.yaml, we have something called, if you just go down a bit, we have something called fonts. So this is an example on how to use them. You just have this format in place. So you have fonts, and then colon, and then a tab, and then we set the family to, so our family is actually called quicksand, so I'll just name it quicksand. And then the fonts are, we just set the path to the fonts using the keyword assets, and then the path to the fonts. So we have them in a folder called assets, /fonts, /quicksand, regular .ttf, and then I'll have the rest done the same. Okay, so, and then I'll also need to set the weights, default weights, because for the bold fonts, I have to set the weight. So for the bold ones, you just say, yeah, see, even in their example for the bold, there is a weight. So in this case, I'll just use the same, which is 700. Of course, you could, you can set multiple fonts at the same time. So I could even add another family here, and then just make sure that you have the right fonts in place. Now, if I save the application, now notice here that we're supposed to, so the fonts has actually changed to the fonts that we've been using. And if I set it to a different font, this automatically updates for you because you've already set the font family to use this one right here. Now, what else? Yeah, what we could do, we could also set a text theme that we could adopt for any text elements, for any text widget in our application. So the way we do that, now we've already set a global font for the application. Now we need to set something called text theme. And the text theme takes the theme data as well. So if you notice, it takes text theme. So in this case, what we're going to do is how about this? How about we set a different, so for the text that we're going to adopt within the application, we want it to have a different font than the global font. So how do we achieve that? So how about we add a different font to our library, to our set of fonts? And how about we add something like Open Sans, for example? Let me download that font and load it here, and then continue with the video. Alright, so I've added the other font here. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so this is saved, and let me go back to our code. So now we need to work with our text theme. Now, something you should keep in mind, though, is that when it comes to the text theme class, you notice that there is this keyword theme off that we will use right now. Just keep it in mind. And then you have all of these things that you can control within text theme. So display 4 is more like the title, and display 3, you can think of it as H2, H1, those that you see in the web kind of web interfaces. And then there's just another title, of course, here, but you get my point. This is like the largest. And then you can control the body 1 and body 2. Body 2 is more like secondary, like, it's a bit bolded. And then the caption, the buttons, the text on the buttons. And so you can control, basically, you can override all of these. You can set all of this typography from within text theme. So, and then the way you control all of these, and then you could simply just adopt, like, for example, if you want to set a text as a body, then you just go like text style theme .TextTheme would be body 1 or body 2 or subheading or title. So it automatically have to, so you just set it once and then you just use it throughout the application. So now let me just keep this one on the other screen for reference if we ever needed to. Okay, so now the way we will be using TextTheme is that we will use the theme data, the primary swatch that we set. We'll use this theme data, default theme data, the colors are like whatever color we set. We want to use it as the default text color, but we want to use the light version of it. So so the way we do that is we go theme data light. So we get the dark color. The dark color is more like, you know, the heavy green, and then in this case we're using the green color, and if it's the light color then it's the light green. So if you have a light green and a dark green, it will be visible, and that's how we see it. Anyway, so this is the default, and then we could of course override, say the title to be red, so the title to be white, and the text to be a shade of white or shade of green, and so on and so forth. So now what this is telling Flutter is that we want to use the theme data, the light colors of your default color, the primary swatch, which is in this case the green, the light green of the theme data that we've already set, of the primary swatch. Yeah, I hope that's clear. Now we can't really stop here. So now what we can also do is that we need to set it to say text theme, and then we copy with. So copy with is more like you override the content of the whatever has been set in the theme data, the default value set in the theme data. Now, so again, so what this is saying is that we want to use the light version of the theme, the light version of the theme, and then we want to set the text theme, which is the we want to override the text theme, copy with these values. So we want to, whatever we set here, the values we set here, we will override them in the theme data light. Okay, so let's set the title. Remember these that we've these attributes that I've already showed you. You can override all of them right here, right here. So now let's go on and set the notice here this text takes text style. So I need to do text style, and then what's in the text style is what's really important. So sorry, text style, we don't set the background, we set the font family. We want this font family to be Open Sans, and then we also want the weight or the size, the font size. We want this to be defaulted to, so this is the title. So this is the title. We want to set the title to 20. It'd probably be too large, but yeah. The font weight, we want to set this to font weight bold. And let me reformat this. So that's the title for us. And then we could also set the body. We could have a body. So we could have a body here, so a comma, and then we could go for body one, and then in body one we could do the same text style. What font family do you want to use? Font family, we can use Open Sans again, but Open Sans, remember this has to match what you've defined here. It has to match the same font family that you've defined here, otherwise you can't really read it. So that's you could set the size, font size to I don't know, 14 is pretty good. It's pretty decent. That's regular. And we could have this, would use the default color, which is the dark, and then we could set the body to use the let's set this to font family, and then the font size to 14 but the color would be a little different. So the color, so then you can see, now see, this is how you would use the color. Let me go for a new line. So for the color, would go, so this is, so for this color is specific to body 2. So this is how we set the color. So we want to use the theme of basically our current theme that we're actually using, and then we would use the primary color. So this is, instead of us using the primary color, we use the primary color dark. And for this one, let me just rearrange this. And we could use for body 1, we could use the primary color. So in this case, theme of the current context, and then we are going to use the primary color. And we just reformat this. And notice now that everything changes accordingly. You notice how things, the body 1 automatically changed to the primary color. And notice something else though. If we set this to dark, notice what happens. It changes to a darker color, right? Let me just roll it back, and yeah. And then now if you want to use a certain theme, what we could do is we could simply import that. Say for example, images, this by default uses body 1. Now if we wanted to use body 2, like if we wanted to specifically use body 2, we just add like like in the text, we could have a comma and then set the style. Now in the style, we just do the same. So we want to tell it use the theme of the current context, so the current application, and then we wanted to use the text. Now, so it came, so by saying theme of context, it's basically we're in the current app and want to use the theme. We have this theme data of primary swatch of green color, and next we wanted to specifically go for the text theme. So we go for text theme, and then which text theme, which of these themes do we want to use? Which of these? So we want to go, for example, for title. So we could go simply title. Of course, you could specify everything else. Now, notice how this actually changes. So this becomes, this conforms to the specific styling. We override the body 1 with this our specific set theme, and that's basically how you actually get things done, and how the themes actually work in Flutter. How about we just have, we could have this as its own separate video, not to make it stretch a little longer, and then I could have the other topic of adding images in the next video. How about that? I think we'll go for that, yeah. Before I forget, you may have noticed that even though okay, so we have so the primary color, setting the primary color actually defaults to the blue color, which is the default color in Flutter when we first began. I mean, I've set this to green, but this didn't change. Well, the reason this is happening is because of what is called the context. Remember that when we set the theme of context, so we're using the current application, and the context is defined way before we even specified anything related to Material App. So Material App is actually below the context of our application. Now, the way to solve this, now notice something. If we have created a widget, if we created another widget and we imported it here, the problem would be resolved. How about we do that now? I know the video is longer than expected. I was hoping that I would do a 50-minute video, but if this is something that really explains the topic, why not? So there are two ways to solve this problem. Again, the reason that this is happening is because the context we're using here is the context of the application, and the only context we have is the context that we have before the Material App, before we've even specified the Material App here. So if we are to okay, so how do I? So it's like this. Let me write it here. So we have the application. So this is the app, and then in it there is the material app that we've defined, and inside of material app we have scaffold, and so the theme is actually defined inside of here. So this is the theme. We've defined the theme here, and then the scaffold we have the theme and the home. So the scaffold is inside of the home, and then this has the context. This is where we first define the context. So material app comes in and uses the theme, and inside of the theme we're actually using the context that we supply to the theme. In this case, the context is the default color. So the way we have to do is either we have to redefine the context here in scaffold. In that case, it will see that there is a theme on top of it, because in this case there is no theme on top of it. In this case there is a theme right here in the material app, so it will adopt this. Or the other way we could do this is so after we've defined the theme and home, we could define our own widget in its own class, its own widget with its own build context. So in this case, the context will be able to see the theme. So my point is the context has to happen or has to be under the theme. So that's the main problem. So let's explore the two. Let's explore the two scenarios. And if you don't mind, I will also have, so this will be its own video on YouTube. I'll also have this part in its own separate video on YouTube as well, under a different title. So you could skip this video if in the future. Anyways, or you could just simply see this video directly. Anyway, so let's explore the first problem, the first solution, where we define so keeping things as is, we just need to define a builder, more like a new context builder within the defining. Remember, so let me just comment this one here. Okay, just keep this as a reference. So the first step would be the first solution is to redefine the context. So in the scaffold, in the scaffold, so we said that we could keep things as is in the scaffold, and then just redefine the context right here. So where is the scaffold? So this is the context. This is the material app. We have the theme. We've defined the theme here, and now we need to redefine the context to use the material app or the theme on top of it. So inside of the new body, so what we are going to do is we need to create a new builder. Remember what we're saying here. This is a build context. So we need to set a new builder, just like that, a new builder, and then this takes in a builder, so like that, and then we need to have it take the context. This is the new context that we're talking about. It basically returns a function. It takes in a method kinda, and inside of this method, what we are going to do is adopt the container that we have. Use the container. So basically, have all of this move inside. There we are. So just have it right here. So what we have done is basically wrap the container that we had inside of scaffold in a new builder. That's all we did. So if we try to save this, and then text theme title, then we could say, for example, if we are to text and then to add the style, text style, and then we have color, and then we have theme.of context, and then primary color. Let's see. See, this has actually changed to this primary color that we've already set, which is the green. So if we change this to red, See what happens. See, this also changes. The primary color changes and everything else changes as well. So, but notice though, because we've already set, because this theme is using the default color, that's right here. So if we remove this one, if we try to remove this one, these parameters, and notice what happens. If we remove the coloring defined in the theme, this is actually defined in the text theme. If we remove those, so we have a, so we need to new line this, and then just have this one comment to that. Now we also need to have this new line. So we have the text style. Yeah, we also need this one. So here we are. So notice what happens now, yeah. So we have, notice, say this one, let's have this one be body one. Notice what happens, yeah. Notice the color that has changed, or let's call this body two. See what happens. You noticed? All right, let me set this to maybe yellow. Nice. And then we can go back to red. Nice. So now notice something. Notice that we have the text theme body, body 2. We didn't specify like a color here, but let me just uncomment this and see what happens. This has changed to the blue because the blue color here is actually defined in the original context that we've already set right before how do you say, because we're actually using the context defined before we even define the what do you call it, the original, before we define the new builder that we've set here in the scaffold that we have had. So it's more like we redefined the context right here. Now let me just show you the other approach. Let me just roll back just to show you what we've done so far. So we just wrapped the container. So this is the original state. So this is the container. We just wrapped this with a new builder. That was one approach. The other approach is we could define a new file here. Let's call this boarding.dart. Okay, and in the boarding.dart, again, we just import the package, the flutter material package, semicolon, and st stateless widgets, and let's call this boarding. And inside of the boarding, we would get the full scaffold class. So where does this end? Let's take all of this and have it in its own widget. So this is the scaffold, and add a semicolon, rearrange, save it. So what I'm doing now is just defining a new widget here and just importing it. Notice that there is a new build here with a new context, which is right below the material app defined here. So in this one, we'll just call this boarding. Boarding, and make sure that we do import boarding here. Yeah, it's already imported. Cut from boarding. That's, yeah. So yeah, if we try to save, notice what happens. Where is it? Boarding, material app, text theme title. Now look, if I change this to the primary color, now primary color should change. Primary color should wrap this inside a text style, and then have it color, then have, I'm just wrapping this in a text style. Just want to show you that this would actually change to now the primary color gets defined by the new theme applied right below the theme data. Okay, so that was the primary issue, is that when you define a theme and you try to use the colors of the context passed here, again, this is how you should think about it. This is the app in its context. This uses the default blue color that ships with Flutter, and then we define the material app, and then inside of the material app we use the theme. Now theme is exposed to the default coloring theme that is passed on by the context. Now in order for the children to use the newly defined theme colors, we just have to redefine the context again. And we've actually looked at two ways to do this, is through defining our own, like defining widgets with their own build context, or we keep things as is on the home page with the scaffold, and inside of the scaffold we define a new builder. I prefer this method, the second method, that each widget has its own class, then setting everything in a single file. Alright, the other main question before we end this video. So we were able to use the primary color and the primary swatch, like different shades of colors within the children through redefining the context in the children. Now, but one thing that is still bothering us is, why do we have this blue text here? I mean, we've already solved this, but why is the other one is not solved? This is where there's a small tiny thing missing in the text theme data. So instead of us using all of this, we could actually, now this really doesn't matter. So all I'm saying here is that we want to use the light theme, and then in the text theme we want to override the defaults. What we could do is that we could simply, notice what this takes, we could just simply go text theme, from the get-go, and if we try to save, this would actually rerun the same thing, would produce the same results. This would probably be the easiest thing for you to remember. The reason I've used this in the first place is just to kind of reflect that you could actually override theme data. Like you could use, in this case, I'm just simply saying that I want to use the light version of the theme data, and then for the defaults on the text theme, I just want to override the title, body 1 and body 2, and keep the rest of the attributes as is, as the default. We could also do, this is basically the same. I just want you to get acquainted with this format, and this is actually the same as defining text theme, just like that. It's exactly the same. It doesn't really make much difference since we are already redefining everything else. Now notice something. If I try to apply let's apply a style to the caption, where we use a theme of context, and then the text theme, and then the text theme, and then we would use the caption, for example. The caption, we haven't defined the caption, but look, this is the default. It kind of defaults to the default settings set by Flutter. Notice that we don't have caption here, but because we've done because we haven't overridden everything, it just defaults to that. So this is exactly the same as we have to this one. So you could just opt for this one if this really suits you, but just keep in mind that this exists if you want to just override a single attribute and keep the rest of the data. And of course you could redo this as well, text theme. One final thing is that you could actually use this inside of the children. So anyways, moving on. What else? The reason why this is actually still defaults to the original colors of Flutter, which is the blue. We've already set the primary swatch to be green, so we're expecting this to be green as well. So the way we achieve that is that you notice that in the theme data, which ends right here, this is the theme data. We should add something called apply, and in the apply we add something called body color, and then we redefine, so we go colors.green, and then notice what happens. See, just rechanges everything else for us. Now if we decided to reformat this, and that's about it. So in the theme data, after we define a theme data, right here we define everything that we need and everything that we wanted. we need to apply whatever we've defined. We apply the change. Notice that the description here is creates a copy of this text theme, but with the given field replaced in each of the individual text styles. The display color is applied to display, and so on and so forth. The body color is applied to the remaining text styles. Nice. So that's how we, hopefully this was clear and simple to understand this video. I'm just more like concerned about the length of the video more than the what I'm trying to. I feel like a bit I should focus more on the explanation than the length of the video. I think that would basically quick recap. The problems we faced so far is that we couldn't really get the application to run the original after we've defined the theme in the material app. The children weren't able to actually adopt the original colors. For example, here we've used the theme primary color. The primary color here defaulted to the original blue color, even though we've defined the primary swatch to be green. The way we overcame this is because, well, the original problem was actually because the context was defined before the material app. And the context here is actually the default context shipped with Flutter. What else? So after we've defined the context, so in order for us to actually adopt the theme, we need to redefine the context either in scaffold or the scaffold. So in the children basically. So one way we've done this is through the defining the context within scaffold in the main, or we redefined a separate widget in its own file. This kind of allowed us to adopt the new theme, the primary colors of the new theme within the children, as in theme of context, primary color. And then, but the styling of the text theme that we've defined here, the colors we've defined in the body 1 and body 2, really didn't change, didn't get reflected. And that reason being, we didn't use the apply. We need to do, for the text theme at least, we need to go for .apply, and we apply the body color and then the original color that we've set to the primary swatch. It didn't really get applied by default because we didn't specify the apply here. Again, the apply simply, what the apply does is creates a copy of this text theme, but with the given field replaced. So this basically replaced the original themes that we've replaces whatever we are doing here with the original color instead of the default color of specified shipped by the Flutter by default. Always consider this context is the default context. So when the theme gets used and this color theme of context gets used, it defaults to this. So if we're using the data in here, inside of here, we need to redefine the context. And because we've already set the coloring way before we've redefined the context, we need to apply the original the colors that we want to use. I hope that makes sense. So I think that we could call this a wrap up now. I mean, so in this video, we've actually seen a few very important parts in which defining the global theme to the application, and then we could use the theme data, or we could use the we could use the method that we've already seen, which is you use the theme and then you just override whatever you want to override. And that approach that we've seen before, adopting theme data, is that you could actually use it in children, just override, say for example, body 2 in that specific instance, and keep using the original theme data. And this structure is very important to remember to really understand how the theme data actually work and how the context actually works. So the theme of context, so we're using the current context passed to the theme data, which is the original one that uses the default blue colors. So the moment we use this primarily color black, it just defaults to the blue color. But the moment we apply the green color to this text theme, it automatically overrides the original coloring of the text. Now, if you want to override the primary swatch, when we use it here, we need to redefine the context to adopt the theme. And yeah, I hope that was clear and helpful. I'll call this a wrap up for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Feel free to subscribe to the channel to stay for the rest of the videos. Basically, it's your call anyway. All right, cheers, mate. Cheers, everyone.